but the engines of YouTube are usually a little lagged, so I'm going to wait a second. Howdy, folks. How you doing? I'm Michael Noland, and this is the Tribal Forum. Now, the channel is called The Bottom Line, but I call my live streams the Tribal Forum because it's where I get a chance to kind of talk to you guys live in the moment. Now, we've always had a pretty good relationship here on the channel. Let me kind of straighten that out. There you go. Get light sources from both sides. Aren't I artistic, right? And Kimberly says I am. I'll take that as a victory, darling. Thank you. Kimberly's in the background producing for tonight. I will say that for all of you who are moderators, and I want to make some more of you moderators, but you got to show up early. And it's got to be early enough for me to see it because then I switch over to my iPad and I'm no longer in the chat until I come on live and I see the chat here. All right, so just to kind of give you an idea, yeah, you moderators, if you see any fiendish thingy kind of activity tonight um, in the comments, I'd ask that you first of all give that person, if it's not a proper type of thing, a troll like comment, give that person just the smallest of timeouts. If they don't get it from that point on, then go ahead and put a kibosh on that. And of course, Kimberly knows, and moderators out there knows that a certain person that we mentioned on Royce, if I see that person activity, they'll be banned from the channel tonight. Okay, because we're not going to put up with trolls, folks. I just won't do it. Okay, so now tonight's video is in response to what you guys, well, basically bought last night. I cannot believe the amount of super thanks that we got. I set a goal, if I got 3 super thanks, that I'd agree and go ahead and do a back-to-back video. Now, I've done back-to-back videos all in one day, but never back-to-back one day and then following it up with a stream in the next day. And I've never streamed on Mondays, right? So this is all kind of new, and we're going to see how it goes tonight. I did want to do a quick shout out to Ben Scheidegger, who has just joined the channel as a channel member, brand new tribal elder. Ben, I will say this. I do have a video that is uploaded and ready to be released, and it will have a ton of shout outs in it, folks. Because and it's a share video of a portion of what happened over on Royce's. And of course, I always clean those up, out, add a soundtrack to it, and kind of cover the story within a story that we cover on Royce's. So when I'm done with this stream tonight, between now and tomorrow morning, I'll go ahead and release it. And what's good about this, for all of you who have been giving super thanks in the last 2 streams, you all get your shout out on that video. All right. And what I've done is, some of you gave 3, 4, 5 super thanks. And what I've done is I've just added up whatever it was, and I give you your rock star shout out, and I truly appreciate it. But just as people are coming in, I won't spend too much time on this because I want to get into kind of the meat of tonight's stream. I do want to give shout outs from the last stream for people who gave super thanks. And of course, that includes Oberheim, who I understand is working. He had the night off last night, but he's working today and listening from work. I have a lot of people who do that. I have people who listen to me while going to work or coming home from work. Oh, he's got a new one, and they just treat it as a podcast. So he's out there, but he gave a shout out or a super thanks. So did RBR, the Retro Beat Repository. Bill Hawkins, a huge super thanks. Thank you so much. Along with another very nice super thanks by Just the Facts Man, Dan McNew. a portion of the panel, and Dan will be featured on that new video that we cover at Royce. The whole video's over at Royce's, so if you want to see the whole video, that's cool. But I have people over here who haven't made that transition, but they do watch the videos that the portions of Royce's videos, and people eventually kind of start coming over to Royce after they've seen a few of those. So everybody will be getting their shout outs there. And by the way, Ben, that is already uploaded, so you won't get your mention as a tribal elder on this one, but I will add you to the list for the very next one and you'll get it. But of course, you got your shout out tonight. Got a nice little green square there. I didn't even know that that existed. That's the first time I saw a new member pop up. And that was really nice. I like the way they highlighted you there. And of course, Storm Cop with an even bigger super thanks last night. Thank you so much, James. Deuce is Wild, who I think is in the audience right now. Several of you are. And of course, Ben, who just joined as a tribal elder. He gave us a wonderful super thanks as well. Okay, so that takes care of that, and that should give enough people, an opportunity to kind of get into the stream, and that way I don't have to repeat myself. We can just kind of begin from this point. All right, so the title of the stream tonight, and this was going to be the stream I normally would have done on a Sunday night, but I felt that covering the shenanigans of the Who last night was a much more important, so it kind of jumped ahead in line. It took cuts, and I went ahead and did that stream. And of course, that's why I'm following up with this stream right on its heels, because this was the original. Actually, this stream that we're doing tonight should have been 3 streams ago, if you think about it. Okay, so I've had this kind of in my head and what I want to, cover tonight. Let's make sure. Okay, I took care of that. All right, so first of all, if you've noticed since I started streaming, I have been covering portions of what I think is wrong with rock and roll. I just want to give you a kind of a list, and this list is growing. This is a list I put together just moments before I got up here. All right. I've covered either videos or live streams on these so-called problems in rock and roll. High ticket prices, the use of backing tracks, lip syncing either to backing tracks or hidden singers backstage to enhance their performances, residencies, the bottlenecking against new talent rising from the top, bands touring with so many replacement members that they are no longer who they claim to be. No new material or very inferior material when it is presented to us by many of these rock artists. I've talked about the problems of Ticketmaster, Live Nation, entities such as the Las Vegas Sphere and Madison Square Garden Entertainment. I've talked about bad performances because the artists are usually way past their prime. We talked a little bit about that. Now, the Who isn't giving us actual bad performances, except for that one mistake we talked about last night. But it's lackluster at the very best. And there are bands that are touring, charging top dollars that are sounding a lot worse than the Who. I will say that. AI, we've talked about AI. We've talked about avatar shows, not on a stream yet, but these are things that I've been trying to cover piecemeal. Brands versus bands, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, lack of airplay for newer bands. And, they say radio is dead. And I guess for the most part, it certainly doesn't wield the power it once wielded. But there are pay-for radio stations and everything, and there's a bottlenecking even on the air. Bottlenecking doesn't just occur on the touring circuit. Bottlenecking is happening throughout the industry. And basically an industry that's just hell-bent backing crappy pop, crappy hip-hop, and crap. I mean, rap. Okay, and they're just and they even put the executives of these subgenres into positions of power, such as the nominating committee of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, they already have a lot of power because they are editors or publishers of either hard-assed publications or online publications. I'll give you an example. How about UCR? That's an online publication. I'm not aware that they actually do an actual magazine, but I often refer to them to get ideas for videos, don't I? And so it permeates everything that's happening in the world of rock. And I think it's hurting it. And by proof of that, I will say this. Let me take some of the glare off of that. I don't want to take up too much because as soon as I take off too much, then I can't read the damn thing. Old, you know. What can I say? Anyway, so all of this said, there is a problem with rock and roll. Rock and roll, just a few short decades, 2 decades ago, matter of fact, a decade and a half ago, it was still selling real well. It was still firmly on the charts. It was being challenged heavily by a lot of the boy bands, the girl singers, as well as oncoming new pop and hip hop and rap and all of that. It was being challenged, but it was holding its own probably right up until maybe 2010. That seemed to be kind of the breaking point, and everything has slowly, but now almost with increasing frequency, it has less and less power. It's less and less important, and it's gaining nothing. And a lot of that bottlenecking and everything, I think, is part of the problem as well. All right. So uh, I'm going to bring that up a little bit so I can read this. All right, so this is an article. Now, first of all, keep in mind, this is an article that only comes up to 2022. Now, why would I go back to an article that only covers up to 2022 if I'm going to make such a big point? Well, a lot of these artists, a lot of these bands I've already covered until I'm blue in the face what they've been doing since about 2021 when I first started my channel. Actually, 2022 is when this channel went heavily into and only about classic rock. Okay, so I've covered a lot of that. And so I didn't need a newer article. And besides, this article kind of tells a story unto itself. And I like the flow of the article. Now, this article is one from UCR, again, November 30th, 2022, farewell tours when rock stars said goodbye, right? And it starts off by saying this. It says the idea of announcing a farewell tour has long been a slippery slope. No kidding, Jack. Ozzy Osborne, The Who, Elton John, Kiss, Phil Collins, and Motley Crue are among the many who have made concrete plans to retire from the road. Others, including Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards and Eagles singer and drummer, well, I don't know that he does so much drumming these days, mainly just gets up there and is the lead singer. And is he really? Because, Don Henley, is he really a lead singer when he's lip syncing? All right, have hinted, no, hinted? Okay, at different points that their bands could be approaching an end date, but avoid fully committing to road retirement. Now, keep in mind, this is from 2022. Since then, some of these bands have committed to retirement, and yet they're still coming on strong. What about the Eagles, since they're talking about the Eagles right now? The Eagles just added, and then they tried to make it sound like it was the last. They go, the Eagles add the last dates of their tour this year, right? It was like this year was added, tacked on to the middle. And of course, they're adding, or to the end, I should say. And of course, they're adding shows through what? A residency. through Las Vegas, which they keep going. They just pop up, they show up for 12, 15 dates, and then they're out of there, and some other band does their, and then they're back in. It's like I don't see an end to this at all. And I think I've got a good reason to believe that, since they've been saying so long farewell. How long now? And there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. They're not citing these are now finally the last shows. No, they're saying these are the last shows for 2025. So the Eagles, so long, farewell, wouldn't want to be a tour, will continue safely into 2026. Now, the article goes on to say, not all goodbyes are premeditated, though. In some instances, bands didn't realize they embarked on a farewell tour until after the final blow. Or bow, it said. Blow. Well, a blow kind of fits in with the sentence there, too. Such was the case for Rush and their 2015 R40 tour. Now, this is what Geddy Lee says. It's clear we are at a point in our career that we have to slow down, and slow down dramatically. So they were feeling the years of the road at that point, right? And Alex Lifeson said there were a lot of reasons, and very valid reasons, for ending the tour in 2015 when we did. I'm glad we did, because we ended off on a really high note. We were playing great. Now, this is, again, 2022. So as of 2022, that was their final statements. And we're already seeing, as I've reported on my regular videos, that Alex Lifeson and Geddy Lee are in talks. They've hinted that they jam together, not only jam together, but they jam playing Rush tunes, that there's an album maybe in the works, and there seems to be a weakening in resolve. Could those two tour, and would it even be Rush, but will they tour as Rush if they chose to take it up from this point? No word beyond that, but a weakening of resolve. And I cover that. Just look at my playlist, you'll find the video where I covered that some of the things they said almost hint at a possibility of a future Rush kind of show. And of course, they'd be, minus their drummer. So they'd have to get somebody else in there. And again, would that truly be Rush? Now, it goes on to say, as classic rock fans have learned time and again, farewell tours are rarely an actual goodbye. No shit, Sherlock. A 2014 cessation of touring agreement wasn't enough to stop Motley Crue from announcing a reunion tour in 2019. Yeah, let's see, 2019. What year is it now? 2025. They're still touring. They haven't stopped. Okay, they're still touring to this day. Kiss said goodbye in 2000, but it wasn't until 2018 that they felt like they had finally reached the end of the road when they played their final show on this current tour. Will it really be the end? The article asks in 2022. Well, of course not. They're set to play. Well, isn't it the Las Vegas Sphere? I think that's where they were set up to play. All right, so that was the final word in 2022. Here we are. What is this? This is 3 years later, and they're right back at it, aren't they? They're right back at it. Okay, so here are some of the people. I promised you over 40 rock artists that have said goodbye. We will not be this, you will not see us this way again. One of the big kind of breakers of that problems, and really, we thought they had really truly done their last show. What about Cream? We were talking about Cream. As a matter of fact, that video I'm talking about with all those shout outs that I still haven't, it's uploaded, I just haven't released it, is a firm discussion that went even further than what I covered in a previous stream regarding Cream, I should say, not Queen, being the first example of heavy metal. And I give actual music on the guitar music, uh, kind of a little lesson on some of the identifiers of heavy metal, right? Well, it says here, it says Cream had been together for barely 2 years when they decided to call it quits in 1968. Now, years later, they would get back together. What year was that? Was that 2005? 2005. And that was at the Royal Albert Hall on November 25th and 26th. They had further plans to tour and take that further, and old wounds healed quick and reopened even faster. And so they couldn't continue that. Now, I've got the DVD on that tour, and it was fabulous to see them. And it was Cream, right? And so we got them, and we got new, more mature revelations of their music out of it. I really loved that. So I didn't have too much of a problem for that. And it turned out to be almost a one-off anyway. I have no problems with one-offs. I have problems with constant touring, no new material, and the bands being so long in the tooth that they really just don't have anything to offer us. It goes on to say Elton John, who's been in and out and in, the man announced his first retirement back in 1977. He was back on the road by 1979. He's made, exits and entrances depending on what celebrity died over the years, so many times. I got to tell you, I was Kimberly and I were listening to some of his stuff earlier today, and I was going through because for me, I was a major Elton John fan from his second album. I think that's the Elton John album. Your Song is on that, right? And all the way up until about Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. I right there. Now there were a few albums after that where he had some really great classic songs, but the albums weren't holding together for me as well. And as he's gone touring, he's become more of a traveling jukebox. A new album to him means he's done a compilation thingy with Brandy Carlisle. All right. Or he releases an album that he wanted to release in 1968, but his managerial team wisely told him not to do it. I listened to that album today, wasn't impressed. All right. Then you have the Doobie Brothers. Now we got a problem here. Because I don't have a problem with the Doobie Brothers. Now, they were saying that they had, first of all, Tom Johnson had to quit. That looked like a death knell to them. But then along came Michael McDonald. They had a second career as the Doobie Brothers, led by Michael McDonald. There was a sliver of time when, what was it, Tyrone Porter, and some of their Jeff Skunk Baxter came on, I think, with Michael McDonald. I don't think Skunk Baxter joined while there may be some overlap, but I don't think he was in the lineup with Tommy Johnson. But anyway, it became a new thing. And of course, Michael McDonald and Jeff Skunk Baxter came through Steely Dan, their work with Steely Dan, either as a band member or a guest musician on several tracks by them. They had that identification. And so they came along, and then, they go by way of the dinosaur as Michael McDonald's solo career takes off, and then Tommy comes back. They have this other one. But I will say they've put out albums. I haven't heard the whole new album yet. I don't even know if all the tracks are available, but I did listen to the two pre-release tracks on their new album, and I love it. Actually, there were three, and I covered that. So they're offering new material, and plus, you can't really get too upset with a band that's got their two major talents in it, with Tommy Johnson and Michael McDonald both being there. So you're going to get renditions of their music as the band was led by both of those. Pat Simmons, of course. It would be nice. I don't think Jeff Skunk Baxter is even isn't he pretty much retired? You see him occasionally in videos where he talks about the old days, but I don't think he's doing anything right now. Maybe one of you know better, but it would be nice if he was on this last Horizon tour. And it's too bad Tyrone and all of that, but that would have been perfect. But this isn't a bad lineup. All right, this isn't a bad lineup, and they still have things to offer. They're still recording brand new music, right? And they're probably not getting top dollar like some of the bands we've talked about, but yeah, as long as they've got something new to offer, that's wonderful. The next one on this list was The Who. We talked about The Who last night, I think, enough. They have retired so many times, it's ridiculous. Even when they retire, and I don't want to do it anymore, you always get Pete Townsend coming back and trying to kind of goad Roger Daltrey into doing it again. And this whole snafu with Zach Starkey being fired from the band, and then, oops, we didn't really mean it. Oh, that's not what happened. When it was actually a power play, I think. And you'll have to watch if you didn't watch my last stream. Watch my last stream after you've watched me tonight, and I go over it all. It was a power play. I think Roger Daltrey wanted DeVores, his drummer for his touring band, to be the new drummer, and I think it's based on not only technique and tightness, which they all agreed, and I agreed with them that Zach wasn't drumming his tightest at that show, right? But I think it was a power play to get it, and there's no end in sight with that because they wouldn't have made this big, kiss and make up deal with Zach unless they're talking about going further into the future. And I think we're on the heels of a major tour, maybe another goodbye tour. You never know with these guys. All right, they mentioned Status Quo. I don't know too much about that band. They mentioned Tina Turner, who was always back and back, but she was the queen of reinvention, weren't they? And they mentioned Ozzy Osborne here. Now, we've talked about Ozzy Osborne till I'm blue in the face on this channel and over on Royce's channel, right? This Promised Last, and they have also got Black Sabbath. So we'll talk about both of them together on this list as This Is Us, this is the last time and everything. And yet here we go, and we're talking about a final Black Sabbath show anyway. And the more we get into it, the more it looks like, Ozzy is less and less capable of actually pulling this off, but there is no backing him away from that. At last count, I guess he is planning on doing his singing from a flying throne. Okay. But once again, it's a one-off. So good luck, Ozzy. Good luck, Black Sabbath. I hope everything goes good for you. But it's not, if this was a show that was held in my local area, I wouldn't be interested in getting a ticket for it. First of all, for the whole bands and all the bands that are going to be there, it's like that's an awfully busy concert for me these days, right? But even if it was just black, well, I don't know. Maybe I would. When it comes, my hypocrisy knows no bounds, folks. All right. So, but he's another one. That's it. This is it. But it's usually, isn't it usually Sharon that says, that's it. He's done, and Ozzy just kind of goes, as she, kind of announces his retirements. And then he goes, oh, but I'd like to do one more, Sharon, But anyway, him and Black Sabbath, they've taken us on a ride, haven't they? Then they talked about a lot of these are mentioned more than once because after they get back, like Tina came back, well, Tina Turner did, and then she goes, that's it for sure. And then she was in 2000, she was back yet again. And I think even further. I saw that, darling. And let me check this out because I'm over on my notes. I see the word Taylor. You guys have to understand it floats up on my screen in front of me, but it doesn't stay very long. But thank you so much. Let me check and see who this is, Kimberly.
Taylor 315.
Taylor 315. Well, thank you so much, Taylor 315. Uh, Taylor gives us a $10 super thanks. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thanks
What
for
is
doing these live streams, Michael. They are greatly appreciated.
Well, you're so welcome, Taylor. And like I've said many times, it's people like you that are keeping the channel afloat. I'm not going to get into that too much tonight. We covered that. But I am so glad to see that. And, with Ben joining, that's like another, it's a monthly commitment that he's doing. Month to month. You can back out after a month too. But he's committing to that, but that's as good as a $5 super thanks as well. So a big thank you to both of you. Seriously, I appreciate it. You guys are awesome. So we were talking about Tina Turner, uh, and how she said she was gone. Then she comes back and she goes, but this is it. And then she comes back, and then even after 2000, she came back, as I recall. All right. So, yeah, she keeps coming back. Smashing Pumpkins, have called it a day. They get back together. Only this guy, we got the original drummer, but the bass player's gone. Right. The guitarist is gone now, but he's back, and you never quite know, and you never know if it's the Billy Corgan show or the Smashing Pumpkins these days, uh, because it's more of, I think, the Billy Corgan show. It's not so much a band. I covered his last three-part album. He may have done something since then. I don't know, but I was frankly. I liked a lot of it, but uh, it it ultimately held no water for me. Okay, and it was long in between to get to the more stellar tracks for me. I think he kind of crawled up his own arse a little bit on that album. It's but I love the first part of the album. It just kind of got too extended beyond that point. Another set of well, we've talked about Kiss. Kiss quitting in 2000. Then they come back, and then they come back, and then they come back, and then they come back. And if somebody leaves the band or is fired from the band, that's okay. They're just characters in makeup anyway, so we'll just get another drummer. Oops, that drummer died. Let's get yet another drummer. Peter who? Peter Chris. Never heard of him, said the demon boy, and so yeah, it just keeps going. And then when they finally said goodbye, they said that there was a future of them as avatars. Now they sold their image, and yet somehow Sun's image, they're going to show up at the Las Vegas Sphere. I just saw that.
Things from 45 RPM.
Awesome. Thank you so much, 45.
He says,
let me check this out. You know what? Your iPad started to freeze up on me, darling. It doesn't want to do what I want it to do. Good Lord, it's jumping all over the place here. Well, let's just try it this way. Oh my goodness. So who gave the super thanks?
45 RPM.
45 RPM. And what did they have to say? Notice how I don't let any dead air happen here, folks. What did he have to say, Kimberly? Because
he says, one of the great things in talking about music, it brings people together. Thanks, Michael. That's so sweet.
I love that. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've talked about that before, 45, many times. The whole idea, the tribal forum, first of all, the people who usually show up here are people who are the ones, and we have almost 90 people watching. I didn't think we'd get much of a viewership, especially we had over 150. I think we had 156 was the peak viewership, which was a record for us last night. And I've never streamed on a Monday, so I thought maybe I'd get 40, and that's only because I've been, tracking at 60 or better. But this is wonderful. You're all welcome here. Over 50 thumbs up already. I just noticed that.
Everybody's so generous.
Wow. Absolutely fabulous. You know what? I'm going to start at the top tonight because I want to get to you guys. and see what you have to say about a lot of this. Uh, let's see. Okay, Mark Astaforov. He says, I'd like to see the Guess Who with Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman. Now, I got to tell you, if that show gets anywhere near close to me, I'd break down and go see it, especially if the tickets were at all decently priced. That would be one. I know it wouldn't be like the original Guess Who, but with those two, it's the Guess Who. And there is talk that other members will show up, but they're not saying who or special guests or something like that. And I'm sure we'll be getting Bachman Turner Overdrive songs on that tour as well. So I'm excited about that too. Storm Cop, by the way, thank you so much. We're very generous. I was worried that, you might be, giving us a super thanks. It was very generous super thanks. And I know you've been through the mill, brother. Uh, he's going, Dividing Dragon, you better. Zoom Zoom. I'd rather watch a good tribute band that tries real hard than watch the real deal old bums who don't really care no more. And I agree with you. As a matter of fact, you can say that the Who, I'd almost rather see a Who tribute band at this point. Again, it's not that Roger Daltrey sounds bad. All right, he sounds better than McCartney is sounding these days, but he's not at all at his best. He's down there looking at the floor, reading the lyrics. He's getting lost in his thoughts, and then blaming his mistake on Zach Starkey's mistake, which Zach did make a mistake. So, like I said last night, concerning the Who and that big crash that created this monstrosity of a gut-turning event this last week, uh, was all based on a very haphazardly uh, put together band. I mean, that's the way they sound to me. They're not horrible, but they lack the punch. And Pete Townsend even went to the point of saying that this is our non-orchestral lineup. In other words, okay, so no orchestra, no strings, nothing kind of filtering in and everything from guest musicians or a partial orchestra or whatever, or extra keyboards to provide that. They do have a keyboardist, so I'm sure orchestrational sounds are put in, played by the keyboard, right? But he seems to be backing up on that. You would think that the non-orchestrational lineup of the Who would have a hell of a lot more punch, especially since they have an extra guitarist in there that's helping Pete Townsend. I can't imagine the Who with two guitarists. It just doesn't sound right to me. All right. Let's see. Dividing Dragon, 80 watching, 41 likes. Please like, subscribe, and share. What a nice thing to say there. Christian, thank you so much. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Arpeggio. Yeah, okay, a longtime commenter. I see him from time to time in my regular videos commenting. Skunk did tour dates back in 2024. Well, thank you for that additional information. I didn't know. I've seen him in a lot of interviews lately, but I didn't see any information him going on tour or anything like that. Was he touring just on his own or what? Maybe you can give me a little bit more information on that, Arpeggio. And an album. Well, he did give me a little more information. All right, I'll look him up. I'll look him up. Boy, they should have him in the Dupes, man. You know, I mean, he helped give them that second wind as much, not as much as Michael McDonald, but he had a whole lot to say, I think, with them having that second wind. Brandon, just want to send a shout out to Paul from Psycho's Platters. Always a shout out, Paul. If you're out there, if you're watching today, great channel. Everybody go over there and watch Psycho's Platters. I often run into Oberheim over there in the comments, don't we, Brandon? Let's see. James Redding. I've seen Michael McDonald at a winery in Western Washington. It was a great concert in the early 2000s. Yeah, I almost went to go see them too. I was playing a lot of wineries, and I was aware of them doing it. And we came close to looking at tickets to go see them. Remember that, babe? Early 2000s, back when we were
Yeah.
over there on Middle Rankin. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Zoom Zoom. Townsend can't even windmill no more. Give it up. I know. He's doing these like from the elbow up, and often not even that much, right? And you're used to these things that he would do, right? And he's bouncing up and down. It looked like he was always on the verge of breaking his ankles, but I can understand that. No, no windmill. But if he was playing all the guitar and it was a punchier band, I'd be okay with it. But I just don't see that. John Pierce, Chicago should bring Peter Cetera back and do one last tour and retire. Yeah, but will they? There's a lot of bad blood between Peter Cetera and Chicago, and aren't there only three of them left now? And they're even talking about a time when Chicago will be touring without any original members. Can you believe that? Without any original members. They're planning for it. See, that's been the problem. That's been the problem. That's another thing when I talk about brands instead of they're brands. They're not bands anymore. Foreigner is a brand. When you go see them, you're seeing a brand. Not one single member in that band ever made that music to begin with. Plain and simple. Sad but true. So thank you, John. That's a good comment. And I'd love to see Sotera back and doing something like that. That would be good if they could, and he's not the hottest thing on the planet anymore. You'd think bygones be bygones, but some wounds, they just don't heal. They just don't heal. You get a bad taste in your mouth and you can't eat that thing that you ate that one time you got real ill ever again, right? And for a lot of these bands, these the problems that are going on with these bands, that's exactly what's happening. And there's just not enough room in some of those people's hearts for any kind of forgiveness, and quite often, quite rightfully so. Somebody has just done it too many times. That's it. I'm done with him. I don't care. Oh, I hear he's much better these days. Well, good for him, but I ain't chancing it, and so you'll get those kinds of things. I think you see that with Styx and Dennis, right? Yeah, they're not going to bring that guy back, no matter what he says. He ain't coming back. No, no, domo arigato, no more, no, no. Okay, but Rockin' Bluebird, or Rockin' Robin Bird, I should say. Uh, Bluebird. I don't know where I came up with that. I feel like Ozzy will be singing backing tracks. Are you talking about Ozzy Osborne? They say, see, here's the thing. That's a good point. Everybody he can't walk, he can't talk. Maybe he's going to lip sync, except that from what we've heard, his voice is in fine repair. He has no trouble singing from a seated position, or I guess he could probably, if he could stand, he was on crutches or whatever, because I think that's about where he is right now. Maybe he could sing as well. I hear his voice is in good repair. So, but if it's not, who knows? I don't, good Lord, I wouldn't be surprised by anything at this point, Rockin' Robin Bird. Arpeggio goes, I wouldn't see Ozzy if it was free. See, I'm such a big Sabbath fan, and I quite literally, I won't go see this concert, and I wouldn't go see it if it was in my area. I already said that, and then I start backtracking if I think, yeah, well, yeah, but these are the four. It is like a final goodbye, but as they're planning. See, he's going to be doing his solo stuff, which is all well and good, and then only three or four songs with Sabbath, and it's mainly going to be Sabbath playing. And he, at one point, it sounded like he was going to be off stage, but now maybe he'll be on a flying throne and inputting. And it says he'll be doing small little things, inserting things. So does that mean his voice is fine, but he can't even get through an entire? I don't know. I don't know why, because it almost sounds like his approach is going to be to pepper in to the rest of the band playing. It sounds less exciting to me. All right. That's all I can say. Joseph Blue. I think the Doobie Brothers are playing in the Philadelphia in August. I hear that's what they're doing. What do you guys think, Joseph, especially about their new album? I've heard 3 tracks. I love them. Okay. Is it the best thing they've ever done? No, but it's good, solid new material. I wouldn't mind having that album if the rest of it sounds as good. I just haven't kept up. I don't even know if it's been released yet. Been busy on the channel with other bands and other things, right? Deuces Wild. Wish Burke Shelley was still alive. Budgie was an awesome band. Awesome live too, and also underrated. Very well put. Brandon Oberheim says, "Hiya, Kimberly. I'll send a super chat tomorrow. It's payday then. Oh, thanks, brother. I appreciate you doing that.
Don't worry.
Seriously. But the more important thing is I'm glad you're listening from work, right? And the more important thing is that you're here, and we're just having a great time with you in the chat, brother. That's all I can say. James Redding, I seen her in the '90s at Tacoma Dome. Great concert. Her. Who are you talking about here? I probably went past that. I'm not seeing somebody. Okay, so I'm sorry. Would you be talking about Ann Wilson or what? I don't know who you're talking about there. Oh, Taylor. Is it Taylor? Taylor Swift? Or no, this is Taylor that's in there. Okay, I see. Oh, conversation within a conversation. All right. Caitlin, it's good to see you, darling, in there. Miss Divine Caitlin. All right. I always go over to her stream, and it's so nice that when you come over and support my stream, girl, I really appreciate it. Let's see. Joseph Blue. Oh, maybe you were talking about Tina Turner. Tina Turner will never be coming back again. Rest in peace. That's true. Unless they find a way to bring her up in avatar form. And watch out, because it's happening with Elvis. Why not Tina? Beyond the Horizon, first time I've seen you in the chat here, says at least Zeppelin isn't trying to hang around. That's true. And if there's any one content creator on YouTube that was holding out hope beyond hope, it was me. One more. My first 2 years on YouTube. One more concert. One more. I made videos about it, right?
Oberheim says also a shout out to Royce from Royce in the House.
Yes, absolutely. I've already mentioned Royce several times. And that new video that I've already got uploaded, I just haven't released it, is about a 13-minute portion of his show last night. And I think you guys will really enjoy it. Okay. That'll be the next one. And that's where I give you shout outs for all your wonderful super thanks from the last 2 streams. There's a ton of you on there. It's wall to wall shout outs on that video. So look forward to that. Let's see. Yeah, Storm Cop very wisely says, Joseph Blue, you never know with AI. And that's part of my problem. And I've done a couple of streams on AI. We're going to get back to it. You know, I used to do videos in my first stream on AI and videos on AI. They just, it's like shouting to an empty canyon. They get okay views, but not ever some of my best stuff. And I've been shouting from the rooftops on AI pretty much since I started this channel, and it has become a problem to deal with. Right? I love it when it's dumbed down. I'll give you an example. The AI tools or near AI tools that the Beatles used to isolate tracks and take a 4-track recording and give it 48 tracks if the recording needed it, separate everything and remix it to be more palatable to what became shortly after when the Beatles were on the scene, kind of prerequisites of a stereo field. You don't put your cowbell over here in the far right and the lead vocals here and the rest of the band, somewhere in the middle. There are rules you follow. And so it's kind of nice for that. And I like when AI accomplishes that. But that's an enslaved AI. And I think that that's where AI needs to remain. It's now thinking on its own and stealing from humans. Shame on it. I say, it should get the big chair, you know. Uh, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a danger. Deuces Wild, Tina Turner was a class act too. Rest in peace. I agree. And she had legs that went on forever, didn't she, guys? Everybody knew those pair of legs, boy, and she worked them. Deuces Wild, Tina Turner was a class act too. Oh, I just read that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay. And let's see. And he has every right to be part of the band. I'm not sure which band you're talking about, Caitlin. Oh, Eric Singer. Okay. All right. Well, all right. Caitlin is more of a Kiss fan than I am. And I can understand why she's coming up with that. I thoroughly disagree with you, Caitlin. No big surprise there, huh, girl? Um, no, to me, Kiss was, the four original members, and I lost total interest, and I only had a bit of interest in them. Um, couple albums of theirs that I liked. So I've never been a big Kiss fan. They came out, I was already too old for them. I was into Alice Cooper. I didn't need another dress up band that, frankly, isn't nowhere near as talented as the Alice Cooper, original Alice Cooper band. And so that's what I think about that. But Caitlin is very forgiving for bands doing replacement members. I don't know how far forgiving she is all the time. It's sometimes it depends on who it is and how big of a fan she is, right? And so she's just someone with another opinion like me, and we just don't quite gel along those lines. So she thinks Eric Singer, or the drummer that replaced Eric Singer, I guess is what you're talking about, right, Caitlin? Has every right to be in the band as, anybody else. And that's where we kind of part ways as far as agreeing with each other on that. But Caitlin and I rarely disagree when we talk about Alice Cooper, do we, girl? Beyond the Horizon, Beatles went out on top. That's the way to go. Yeah. And you know what? There was a long time. It's not like they went out on top and John was dead by the end of the next year. There was a whole decade. There were offers, serious offers, and the band had just grown. See, this is the thing. The Beatles, to me, never lost their humanity. They were just John, Paul, George, and Ringo. These four guys, extremely talented guys, geniusly talented individuals, but they were still just the same four lads that got together, not ultra rich. John was, as a boy, more well off than the other three, and of course Ringo wouldn't come until later in the story. But they never quit being George, Paul, Ringo, John. You know, you could tell in their interviews and everything. They they what they matter of fact, that's a key to their secret. Their look, their brand was not a brand. It was just the four of them. You know, could you sing a song for us? No, we need money first. John Lennon, right? Don't you ever get a haircut? I had one yesterday, George, right? This is just them. I hung out with people who do that. I'm kind of like that myself. I've got, one-liners to every situation. So I understand those kind of people. But that became a brand, and then you'd have bands coming later and they're doing the same things that John Paul, George, and Ringo were doing. But now it's kind of almost an act, I mean, poses the Beatles do, because the poses they did was just the way those guys, line up against that wall, get up on that stairway and lean over, and that's the way. But then that became such a big seller. People go, well, how did they lean over? And you'd see copying of their styles of album covers and the way that other bands would photograph themselves. But with the Beatles, it was always real. Okay, it was always real. First of all, that's why they still reign supreme. And do not get me started. This is another video I've got promised for you guys. And another reason why I wanted to do this stream tonight, because I needed time to shoot a rant video on the Beatles, because I ain't happy in 2025 at all if rumors are true regarding what they're going to offer us this year. Matter of fact, I'm pissed off to no end, and that will be my probably my next video released after this portion of Royce's. Okay, and all of you folks who have given me a shout out or a super thanks tonight, it'll be on that video where I give you your shout outs. All right, let's see. Sunshine Cool Water. I love that. Uh, I watched Phil Collins fall off his stool during his last tour as a solo artist. It was a hard hit. As a solo artist, so was he? Now, this wasn't after Genesis. He hasn't done anything after Genesis. So, was this even before Genesis? Because I heard those shows were good, but I just I don't want to go and see an artist. And he's a drummer. He should be on the drums. His son is drumming. You've all heard me complain about that. Beyond the Horizon, I think the Who needs to stop and walk away. It's getting ridiculous at this point. I feel it got ridiculous decades ago. They're one of those bands, you had four of them. It's like the Beatles getting back together and there's no Ringo. Sorry. I don't care who you get to drum. Oh, we have Zach Starkey. Well, it'd be the same thing as Led Zeppelin with Jason Bonham. It's not, that wasn't Led Zeppelin, not really. Came kind of close. And it was wonderful to see the three guys up there playing with a guy who was related to the band, you know. And that would be okay. But, no Ringo, no Beatles, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And the Who are one of those bands. I think it's time, as soon as Keith Moon passed away, that was it. They should have, rolled up and guarded their legacy better. Because the more that these bands, now here's a point, guys, the more that these bands continue doing this, what is this? This is the perpetual touring. All right. The more that they do that, there's less room on the playground for new kids to come along and offer a new game. And these guys are not offering us anything. It's not like, oh, yeah, they'll have to wait their turn because we're still putting out, it would be like the Who, oh, our next album is going to bury Who's next. Want to bet? Because they're so far past. And so it bottlenecks the whole industry, right? And they become almost a soundtrack for the next 300 movies out by Hollywood, because whoever's touring, often some of their hottest hits winds up either in the end credits or during an intense scene, right? And it just bottlenecks the entire industry, in my humble opinion. Now, going on with this list, I want to get back with this list that we have, or at least I will if it clicks through. All right, that's good. So we're talking about Kiss. Sorry to hurt your feelings, Caitlin, but Caitlin's just as fast as shoving me down on her thing. She can be quite acid tongued. But I appreciate you being here, Caitlin, and I love the fact that other people have a different opinion than me. Um, of course, Cher, the face that will not walk away and looks more like a rockaway these days. All right, enough said about Cher. Cher in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame without Sonny's bullshit. Okay. After that, she was just a pop star. Nothing really, no real rock connections, except that she used to be part of a pop rock duo called Sonny and Cher. Phil Collins, by the way, for the I'm trying to remember who brought up Phil Collins in the last comment I just read in 2004. So maybe that's what you were talking about. Is that the one where, oh, no, he announced his retirement and then he came back by 2007. So that's starting to get there close, although 2007 might be even too early for him to be in a chair, actually. But anyway, we never saw him totally go away until this final Genesis thing, and he practically can't walk. But then neither can a lot of these people. Peter Frampton. I'm done. I'm done. And then all of a sudden he gets the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nomination, and he's extending it. Can't get up. He's in a chair. Ann Wilson's in a wheelchair. We've talked about this in the past. Let's see, who else do they have here? Fish, who never saw a quitting they didn't like. Ministry, I'm not familiar with this band. And also the Go-Go's. Now they're talking about 2010, then the Go-Go's got back together. What year was that? 2011. Then they're done, and now they're back. They're connected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they're kind of not. And so, the Go-Go's were done once the lead singer had a solo career. All right, but they sounded pretty good at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I wasn't looking too close to see if there was any backing tracks. My first impression was they were playing what was being played on. All right, they talk about the Scorpions have been there and back, and this thing's freezing up on me all over the horrible little place. I've got a few choice words I'd like to scream at my iPad about now. What's going on here?
Shake it into shake.
Oh, it's doing its thing, baby. You know how it goes. This is her iPad, so you think I'm cussing at it. You ought to hear her when we're off. What the hell is going on here? Nah, she never uses that kind of language. That's me. That's me. So we're talking about Cher, Phil Collins, Fish, of course, Ministry, which I said I didn't have much. This is just barely going through. The Scorpions, talking about Judas Priest. Judas Priest is at least putting out new music. Then Meatloaf, who practically died going on one more tour. Not quite, but just nailed to it. Uh, uh, Other people, let's see if there's anybody. This will give you an idea. Of course, Motley Crue is on their list. Talked about that. The Allman Brothers, back when Warren Haynes was quite the superstar with them, and they got the Trucks Kid in, and then later it's like they have offshoots of that band. It just won't go away quite. Same thing with the Grateful Dead. What is that now called when they do get together? Dead and Company, things like that. We've got, oh yeah, the Go-Go's again, because they said 2010, 2011, then 2016 they're back, and then this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing. Because let's take it from there. Twisted Sister didn't give up, although Dee Snider finally did. All right, so that'll give us a good idea. And the reason that I even wanted to go through a list like this tonight is, what is this indicative of? All right, now a lot of these people are multimillionaires that I covered. Um, and yes, there is human greed attached to it. How many millions is really enough? Once you have one, wouldn't it be nice to have two? And two is not as good as 5 million. 5 million is nowhere near as good as 10, right? And so there is that human need to really push the envelope. Well, if I'm worth this, and then it becomes almost a status quo. And of course, a lifestyle that's bought by all of that. So, with all of that in mind, it's not just about money, although that has a lot to do with it. Why do they keep doing it? Well, for some, and there were a few here and we talked about them, it's to continue to make new music and solidify their legacy by playing some of their big hits. Uh, of course, the Doobie Brothers was a great example of that. But what about, and none of them are turning down the bucks, and they're all charging what they can get away with, right? Despite the fact of what Kid Rock would say. I'd love to drop my prices, but if I did, you know, the ticket scalping would still happen. That the tickets would still cost my fans as much as it costs today. So how can I drop my prices? How about just doing it to be to show a good example and to show us that you really do think you're one of the highest or most overpaid performers on planet Earth. Do something about it, because if you're being overpaid, the fact that ticket scalpers are going to keep your tickets high isn't the issue anymore, is it, kid? The issue is you're overpaid and you've done nothing about that. You admitted that, right? And so I have a problem with that when we see these, stars that come out and they say one thing and their tongue is firmly implanted in their cheek, right? And so what else is it? And this is where I'm going to be taking the stream in the future as well. So please keep this in mind, folks, because I want to do a future stream where we're going to talk about all of this in general. We're not going to get bogged down like we are tonight, talking about the mini bands and when they came back and what they did. Or we're not going to get bogged down into just the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But I'm going to get some identifiers there, and we're going to go over this list. And I want to present it as a thing because this is where the channel's been going. If you think about it, this is where and it wasn't on purpose. This happened, forgive me, Chris Elliott, organically. Now, Chris, that's an inside joke. Chris wasn't getting that I was, kind of teasing him on that. And if you're watching, Chris, it's just my way of joking through, right? But there is a generalized problem here. And until we can figure it and kind of put it out there, what did I give you? 14, 15 examples of what's going on. And that's what I typed up madly in the last 3 minutes before I got up here to talk to you people, just by memory. All right. As soon as I get off this stream, and I always rewatch my stream to see, okay, how did that go? Where could I, be better? Oh man, I went dead there. Content creator that doesn't do that is really missing an opportunity because it is my firm impression that every stream, every video gets a little better in some way. I'm always striving to improve myself, right? And so I've kind of slipshotted my way in to this generalized problem where rock and roll is not where it should be, and it has its own damn self to blame as much as it has to blame outside forces that are working against it. And that's where we're going to be going with all of this. All right. In the future, I'm going to work this up. I'm going to get this list out. And then I want to come up with what I think I would do to fix this, and keeping in mind that you got to deal with some of these well established institutions, these well established, I like to call it traveling medicine shows. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame sells snake oil. Okay. A lot of the rock critics are selling snake oil. A lot of pop rock acts and artists are selling snake oil. I'll give you an excellent example. A recent video of mine dealt with Beyonce and her country album. Now, longtime viewers will know that when I was over on Royce, we covered that album, and Royce was critical of it. But I felt like basically on the panel, the panel was kind of looking at some of the good things about it, which is good, right? I mean, you can't have a contrarian type of view on everything. But I listened to that album. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was as bad as Rockstar by Dolly Parton and as unreal as Rockstar by Dolly Parton. And as fake ass, nothing country about it, no matter how she sits a horse, right? And I even questioned, was Blackbird by McCartney even a rock ditty to begin with? And I thought I had kind of stepped in it there because, a lot of people listen to that and go, oh, well, that's, kind of an acoustic song. That's the Beatles. That's like him. That's an early rendition of Sally G, which I didn't even think Sally G was country and Western. I could hear the connection, but, or Man, We Was Lonely, right? when you talk about some of McCartney's country leanings. But this Blackbird was never that. He got the chord progression from, what was it, 16th century, 17th century, probably. Chord progression approach from a classical musician, right? I just saw that. Michael Boswell. Michael always comes in oh, wow, $5. Thank you, Michael, so much. Michael's becoming a permanent fixture here. Always good to hear from you, brother. Let's see. He says, I feel the destruction of the recording industry has a lot to do with health of rock and roll. Okay, good point, Michael. I wouldn't have thought of adding that. And when I reviewed this, you're absolutely right. The recording industry. What about the recording studios? Availability of recording studios. All right. And the advent of home recording studios. Entire albums being done with no more equipment than what you see behind me right now. Okay. And people making an inroad. I'm actually not against that. The only problem is if I turn around and start doing some recording here, and I just let you guys kind of look over my shoulder and watching. All right, I don't have a drum set in the studio. I don't even have a drum set that is an electronic drum set where I can lay down a track, right, and then play bass over it, right? So I'm probably going to grab a drum sample. Then I'm going to probably grab another drum sample that has like an offbeat I want, and then I'm going to cut that offbeat, and then I'm going to slice a part out of the original drum sample and place it in there because I want it to go bum bum ba ticka boom pa da pa da, right? And that it becomes a process of cut and paste. Now there's a room for that, but only for me in doing demos, which is why I even got into recording, is so I could demo and I love playing bass over a rhythm guitar track I played, or a keyboard thing that I did, or a drum beat. I've actually played drums on my tracks and other percussion instruments, right? My wife loves playing congas, so I got her a set of congas, and so she has a nice set of congas, mid-range congas and stuff. And she's allowed me to use it, and I've actually used that to make demos as well. I just put an instrument in my hand, and I'll make some sort of noise out of it, right? I put a computer in front of my hands, and I'll make some sort of musical noise out of it through whatever it is. And I've done plenty of recording, exactly how I've done or described just now, folks. All right. But see, the problem is that becomes the end product. To me, my demos are the beginning. And I've never taken it beyond that, right? But if I had, all of a sudden George Martin discovered Michael Noland, right? We're going to take you into Abbey Road. Well, here's my demos. Oh, well, that won't do, right? But at least it's a beginning spot. At least George Martin would have an idea of what I had in mind, and then he could, reconfigure and go, well, that's where you were wrong, young man, right? So it should be the beginning of the process. And what are we getting? We're getting this is the end process. So what do? Well, they can't replicate that shit on stage. So what do? They use backing tracks. I got a lot of flack. Well, not a lot, but by a few of you who were claiming that Lady Gaga Goo Goo actually does her own singing live. And my only problem is I'm seeing how much she's moving, and I'm going, I don't think that's possible. All right. I've done a lot of moving and singing on stage. I know what it takes. No, I wasn't a dancer. All right. But I've been involved in stage production, acting, things like that in the past through school and things like that. I know how how important it is, to not move around on time. And plus, you're dancing. You're gonna get I don't know, and you don't hear that. So it's got to be backing tracks, or at least there's backing tracks. So when she gets out of thing, then it becomes the backing tracks, and then she fades in and out depending where she is. And then claiming, because we've talked about bands that have said we don't use backing tracks, and then you catch them doing exactly what I just described. So, and the Coachella concert. Oh my God. The Coachella, I really wasn't that aware of Coachella before this year. And of course, I did a video based on how politics got reared its ugly head at Coachella this year. Evidently, it's not just the fact that a lot of people were upset with the political flavor. Now, it doesn't matter. Probably most people who went to Coachella agree with, or have a lot in common with what Bernie Sanders was saying. There's no doubt about that. So not everybody was upset about it. What I was upset about, see, like I said, I was okay with him talking his shit at his rally. But now coming into a music event and then making his spiel, right? And then introducing the new musical act, then that becomes part of the problem. Well, evidently the bathrooms are all out of whack there. People aren't being able to get to the stage that they wanted to do. Hours and hours and hours waiting to get in there. And we talked about the only way you can avoid that is if you take the shuttle in, and the shuttle will cost anywhere from $100 to $150. This is a money-making boutique little piece of shit concert that's getting all this airplay, and this year especially because guess what? It came with a political flavor, and politics are selling these days, right? And to me, it's got to be about the music. And there's room for politics in music. I've listened to the politics of some of my favorite artists that I don't agree with, but they don't like the fact that I might be listening to their music. I really like them as an artist. I'm not happy with, their set of politics, or the fact that they seem to want to hammer their politics over my head, whether I agree with them or not, right? Then I got a problem with them. All right. So, and that's another. I don't think I mentioned turning concerts into a political internment camp. You know, and I'm not the only one that feels that way. It wasn't too long ago I did a video on John Mellencamp, and he was at a concert and he was going off on a political tirade, right? And somebody yelled from from the audience, "Shut up and just play the music." All right, kind of a rude comment, but it gets to the point somebody's going to say that at one point. This is a freaking concert, and if John Mellencamp has the guts to get up there and tell the world how the world should go, despite the fact that maybe I would imagine at his concerts, it's, 50, 60, maybe 65% of the people going there might even agree with his politics. But the thing is even if I see somebody that I agree with their politics, I don't want to hear them at a concert. And I think it's bad for rock and roll. And it's almost like they think that that's going to give rock and roll, some sort, these concerts and the sound of rock and roll some sort of validity. The validity of rock and roll, yeah, and everybody points to the past. See, they were against the war. They believed in free love, right? Everybody lived in a commune. We're the same as that. And that's bullshit. People who are claiming to have that original, their leanings right back to the 60s, most of them weren't there, first of all. And the ones that are claiming that they've got their roots back to the 60s, uh, did too many drugs, in my opinion, because they're not remembering what it was like. You had people from both sides of the political aisle, young people, who were against that war. All right. It wasn't a declared war. It was a police action. And for some strange reason, we were what? We were drafting our young men to go over there and die in a non-declared war. A lot of people were against that on both sides, folks. All right. And some of us were fooled with free love. Mainly all us guys, because, hey, why not? Right? We're all self-centered. But as I grew up, I go, there's a price to be paid with free love. And on several, there's sexual diseases that would come out of that approach, right? And do you meet anybody of great quality that's worth spending the rest of your life when everything's a one night stand, right? All right. But then there would get things, women should be paid for the same job. Yeah, sounds good to me. There shouldn't be discrimination against anybody of any color. Yep, I was all for that, right? But people laying claim that that is, and but they've now added a peripheral of additives to that whole thing, and then claim the original. See, that's what I call rewriting history. All right. I'll give you a musical example of rewriting history. Roger Waters doing his remake of Dark Side of the Moon, adding new lyrics and everything, and then claiming that he wrote the original all by himself, which is bullshit. It was a group collective effort. He wrote all the lyrics and he had a major input on a lot of the songs, right? But he's an egomaniac. And that's part of the problem that I see with that whole entire approach. All right, so I'm going to get back to some of your comments here before we sign off tonight. We're getting close to about an hour and a half here. And I got to tell you, folks, Kimberly and I, oh man, neither one of us have slept more than about 2 to 2.5 hours since last night when we did this stream. And I'll tell you, part of it was right after I had to get up and I was on Royce's stream, and it was an extra long stream, longer than we usually go. So, and then I had to get back and start answering your comments. I had to edit a portion of Royce's stream for a release that I will be releasing here between now and tomorrow morning. I don't know. I'll see how it goes, right? But within the next 24 hours, it'll be released, and then I'll be shooting my next video that will be released right after that. And I got to tell you, we didn't get any sleep. I may have fallen asleep somewhere between 6 o'clock this morning and about 8:30, and I was back up and preparing for this video. Like I said, I was quite literally typing at the last minute before I went on. I think I was maybe 50 seconds, maybe a minute and change late to coming up, because I went, oh yeah. And that's often how I put my streams together. I've got a firm idea what I want to talk about, but then it depends on what kind of mood I'm in, what kind of energy I have. What do I want to cover first versus let's start it from part B tonight. And that's kind of what I was doing, right? But this is the forum here, that this live stream. I really appreciate you guys' input. All right, because it's going to have to be where a channel starts to grow and the insiders start viewing what's being said on that channel. Because as the channel grows, then that develops a sense of power over the mindset of average concert goers. The more people start, thinking beyond the end of their nose and seeing what they're really getting, then that's the beginning of the revolution. That's the beginning of change, right? Way before we get into, say, AI and legislating that nonsense right out of the air, right? It begins with a conversation, like right here on the channel. I did want to get to this. It's been a while since I heard from Ashley Reynolds. Tommy, yes. But the whole point of Midnight Oil is to make political music. Therefore, people who like that will listen to them, and people who don't like it won't listen. And you know what? Good point, Ashley, because guess what? The original Dark Side of the Moon in Roger's head was, if not a political statement, it certainly was a philosophical statement on madness and the limited time that we have, and within that time, where our attention can be directed, right? So he was talking all about that, and he probably was thinking while he's writing all of those lyrics, much like he thinks today, and those lyrics meant much more closer to aligning with his thoughts today, but that's not what I took out of it, right? What I took mainly from Dark Side of the Moon is the limited time that we have, right? The ridiculousness of and what would I say? Sometimes we're asked backwards about what we appreciate and the dangers of mental illness. And I got out of it the dangers of wishful thinking from that album. That's not what he thinks it's all about. But see, once he released it, it belonged to us, Ashley. And my copy belonged to me. And I came, and Ashley, you know what? I'll bet you when you listen to Roger Waters' music, you have a completely different thought process and everything else. I have no trouble with people writing their politics in the lyrics. But once it's out there, I don't need it to be hammered in my head at a rock concert. If I want to hear a political speech, I'll go to one of Bernie Sanders' um, rallies. Oh, bonus. Neil Young's up there and he's rewriting Rockin' in the Free World. You know, that's a brand new version, baby. Take America back, right? But see, I have no trouble with that because that was a rally. Everybody wanted to be there. And everybody pretty much either wanted to cover the story, whether they wanted to be there or not, or they wanted to hear the message. They were open. Look at the crowd. They were all on Bernie's side and they were all on Neil Young's side. And there is a time and a place, and that's a time and a place. And if Bernie Sanders wants to have a musical guest, I don't know much about political rallies. I don't know nothing about birth no political rallies, said he, right? I know a bit about concerts and things like that, and I would like to see less preaching. The message is still there. You know, you show up and you do your rendition of, without messing it up and purposefully entering, so and so is fucked. I hate such and such. That country sucks on top of the original lyrics. And that's kind of like what Neil Young's doing. And certainly Neil Young had a right to do it at that rally. Okay. So I'm not preaching against that. That to me, that's okay. All right. I didn't care for the rewrite, although he sounded good once he got into the song. He had that real grungy Les Paul going. I think he was playing his Les Paul. Sound crunchy, his voice still rang clear and everything, sounding as good as Neil Young ever did. All right. Stormcott says, so sad to hear of Pope Francis passing. May he rest in an eternal peace. Yeah, it's sad to see anybody of a spiritual nature pass on, especially if they're a spiritual leader in the world. It seems like these days we don't have enough of those. And I'm not talking about anybody in any particular religion. So amen to that, Storm Cop. We need spiritual leaders in this world. And that's not necessarily even leaders who are from religious aspects, spirituality, a basic treating of each other in a fine and outstanding way. Why the hell not? Why can't we, agree on some things? Like let's not murder our fellow man. There's a good place to start. I'm not talking about killing. I'm not talking about warfare. There's a time and a place, and I'd be dead set against that, but there's no stopping that. And sometimes you do have to take a stand, right? I'm not talking about taking someone's life as an act of self-defense, but premeditated or in the heat of the moment murder is wrong. That's a human life. Often you see these murderers and they're fighting for the right to remain alive and be paid for the rest of their lives being locked up. Their lives are important to them then, and we need to see each other. And then when you stop seeing people as a number, then you start going, that person has gone through in their lives and has dealt with at least as many problems as I have. And they've come up with a whole different idea of what's wrong with the world, what's right with the world, who should rule the world, what side of the fence we should be on and all of that. And who am I to argue with that? I've got my ideas. I try not to push them here on the channel, right? But there's some basic stuff, don't take what doesn't belong to you, right? Try to be as truthful as honest. Don't be a fake ass person, right? Try to keep your word. If you say something, I'm doing this stream tonight. I am dead freaking tired. I will probably collapse in this chair when I'm done. But I made a promise to you guys. I try to be a man of my word, right? And I try not to be so stuck in any one belief system that I wouldn't change my mind at a moment's notice, but you got to have a good argument. I've been around the block a few times, and I reached a point in my life where I went, no more gurus, right? Now it becomes an argument. You better have something to say to me because I got a brain that's going to dissect everything you say and try and make it sense in my world. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to probably come back and say, you're wrong. But once again, that's my opinion. And where I think I might have won an exchange with somebody like that, they're probably going home going, yeah, I nailed it against Noland that time, man. Motherfucker didn't see what was coming, right? So nobody's more important than anybody else, including these rockers who tour perpetually. And this is my final thought tonight. So if it's not just the money, right? And if it's not just the fact, well, I don't know what else to do. I've been touring since I was knee high to a grasshopper. What else do I do with my time? Right? Then what is it? It's addiction. It's addiction. It's that one-to-one connection with an audience. And it's a rather one-sided one-to-one connection. It's usually the audience going, ha, and the other guy going, ha, ha, right? Ho, 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 ha, ha. It gets down to that often. And that's hard to give up. When you think your shite doesn't stink, and there's a whole stadium of people who will go, yeah, I planted my nose firmly between his cheeks. Not a whiff, Margaret, not a whiff. Like roses, baby, right? That's hard to give up. What do you do with that? And then they're getting older and more feeble-minded, and so now they're just plugging in. You know, who was that did Ringworld? I'm trying to remember the name of the writer that did Ringworld. And there's this, you go under the wire, right? They implant it into your brain, and it's hard to give up, man. You can't give up the wire, right?
Divine Dragon says Larry Niven.
Larry Niven, thank you.
Yeah, Divine.
Yeah, was it Larry Niven? Larry Niven's the actor, but you're coming close. Who did Ringworld? Yeah, yeah, I love that. I'm a science fiction buff. I like the stuff from the 40s and 50s mainly, and well into the 60s. Probably my favorite science fiction writer is Isaac Asimov. But I saw, who was it? It was on a stream, and someone was cutting down. Oh, I think it was on Larry Grace's stream, and his guest didn't like Robert Heinlein. And Robert Heinlein is a weirdo. Yeah, as far as being a human being, him and his wife, they were players. Oh my goodness, Joseph Blue, thank you so much. I just saw that.
Oh, that's so
Says Michael, for your efforts, I'm glad we still have albums and CDs to enjoy. Man, you know what? You're so right, Joseph. Frozen in time. They can't. Roger Waters, whether you're a fan of his or not, and I'm a fan of him, just because I am not happy with how he turns his concerts into a preaching platform. I still am a major fan of Roger Moore, Waters. Roger Moore. I kind of like Roger Moore too.
Juice as well said he likes H.P. Lovecraft.
H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. David Niven is the actor, so it's Larry Niven. Thank you. Okay, we got it. Right. Yeah, out of his books, that's the only one I read, and then they did the sequel to it. But I like the whole idea of being, on the inner rim of this ring world that, followed the sun and everything. And it's a huge world and everything. And it takes a lot of the things that were just coming to the fore there. The Wire, is addiction. And I don't know if he was making a connection to like alcoholism or whatever, or if he was more talking about Heinlein again, him and his wife, Yeah,
Defining Drag said Larry Niven, Lucifer's Hammer is epic.
Oh, I gotta read that. I never have read that. Um, I do need to read that. But like Heinlein was a hippie before the beatniks, practically. Before the beatniks existed, Heinlein was a hippie. He was already a '60s kind of hippie, right? And so when you read his novels, there's a lot of socialism built in. Like Stranger in a Strange Land, you have the nest that they're talking about. Of course, this is a collective of people who practically worship this guy named Michael Valentine Smith, who is from Mars. He's human, but he was raised by Martians. It's a whole convoluted story. He comes back, he has great powers, and women find him. Well, let's just put it this way: if Elvis walked into the room, he couldn't get no daylight with Michael Valentine Smith. And so there's a lot of the, almost a commune approach to his, but you got to get past that. See, because I grew up and hung out in three different communes when I was growing up. And they weren't as pretty as people want to make them, like in movies and everything. It's just a bunch of, it's like George Harrison went to San Francisco and said they were just a bunch of dredgy little stinking teenagers. I expected flower power and all of this, and they were all on drugs and everything. And same thing happened at commune. So I don't prescribe to that type of lifestyle. I like a lot of the ideologies around it, but sometimes it just doesn't work with human interactions, right? But I love to go there with it and a lot of the thought processes behind it. Not being hung up on jealousy, not being hung up on thinking you own one person. Oh, she's for me, not for thee, type of thing. I like that idea, but it often doesn't work
Don't get too
in real life. Uh, oh wow, we've got Rockin' Robin Bird has become a tribal elder.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much. And so I've got two of you I've got to add to my Rolling Thunder list, right? Rockstar list. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. We're at, yeah, we've gone well over an hour and a half. So I'm going to, excuse me, back off for tonight and look for my newest video, which will be a 13-minute portion edited and everything. It gets right to the story, and we're talking about. I talk about what are some of the identifiers of heavy metal, and all of your shout outs, except for the ones tonight, will be in that video, and then the one following that, when I talk about the Beatles, will have all of these shout outs, and you'll be added as a tribal elder on that Rockin' Robin Bird. Okay? I want to appreciate all that you guys have done for me tonight. I didn't think we'd be getting much of a response. We had over 100 people. So, at the very least, this is my fourth most successful stream out of 23 now. All right. So the stream is growing. I appreciate all of you for coming by my house and hanging out with me for a while. Right. And I promise I'm going to get a lot of rest between now and my next video. What's that, darling?
We'll leave the light on.
Yeah, and we'll leave the light on for you. I'm Tom Bodette, and we'll leave the light on for you. Remember those?
Oh,
Back when Motel 6 really cost $6?
yeah.
Remember that? $6 to stay in the place at night.
Voice.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
I did too. Yeah. Yeah. James Redding goes, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Hey, Doc. Good to see you, Dr. Insomnia. Got out of work just as your stream started.
Oh.
See? Wonderful. Stephanie Harrington Neal writings. I'm having trouble. Harrington Neal, maybe is how it's pronounced. Crowley despised Yeats and called him the disheveled demonologist. Okay. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Ashley with another comment. If this wasn't worth watching, we wouldn't be watching. Yeah. But we are watching, therefore it's worth watching. Yeah, I am, therefore I think I am. Right? I am, therefore I think I am. Or at least I think I must be. There you go, man. Keep as cool as I can. For rouse them to believe the web you weave. Keep on thinking free. Ba-da-da-da, right? Takes off. Love that. All right. Alex Trigo, I haven't seen you in the comments before. Hello from Chile. And hello from the Northern Hemisphere, my friend. And you know what? It was from several countries in South America where I started to first get my kind of international audience. Before I was kind of noticing people watching me from Britain or Australia, which is where Brandon's from. I've got a lot of people in Australia watching me, Canada. My first was Argentina, and then tonight from Chile. Welcome to the tribe. That's all I can say. Brent Enman, I have 4 solo albums out. You might dig it. Very old school. Sorry for the plug. Hey, I'll check it out. Can you take a screenshot of that?
I think so.
Yeah. Hey, brother, you're talking to an old busker. As you've been seeing me tonight, I sing for my supper, right? So self promotion out, it's all good. I want to hear what you got. I want to hear what you got. Um, let's see who else. Deuces Wild when Crowley broke away and created uh, Salima, Salima and entered the OTO. They, you know what? They've got me. They got me stumped here, darling.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Are we talking about Aleister Crowley, or is this another Crowley?
Hmm.
Vroom, went right over my head. Arnell, the Pope, was from South America, first Pope from South America, from what I understand. Yeah. Brent Edmond, I play all the instruments, no loops, no backing tracks, no auto tune. I've done that many times myself, Brent. And I love that. You know what turned me on to doing it that way was the McCartney album. He did all the instruments, and I'm going, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Then it took me years to be able to buy my first 4 track reel to reel. Got an Akai. I had to settle for the 1/4 inch. I wanted the 1/2 inch, but that thing was already setting me back. And this is well, mid to late 70s. It was setting me back about $1,400, and that's minus the mixing board. So I hear you, brother. All right, guys. Fostex, yeah, laugh out loud. Hey, my first high-speed deck was a Fostex, and I chose it over the TAC that Bruce Springsteen used because it was better. You could isolate all 4 tracks, buddy. With the original TX, you had to record to tracks 2 and 4, 1 and 3, and you had to bounce them accordingly. And here I could put 1, 2, 3, bounce it to 4, right? And then go 2, bounce that over to track 3, and then use my last remaining tracks. I could get quite a few happenings with too much buildup of tape hiss. Of course, we're talking about an 1/8 inch tape, but it was high speed. And I bought metal tapes for that, so they were even better coated and all of that. You know what I'm talking about. Half these people don't. But I love the original Fostex. Then I rebought, I quit recording for a while in 92, 91, 92, 93 ish. I rebought a Fostex just so I'd have a small little deck on there, and it was horrible. Half of it didn't sound as good and everything. The quality wasn't as good or anything. But those original, the only problem I didn't like about the Fostex is the windows didn't come up for the VU meters, right? Like the TAC. The TAC looked better than the Fostex machines. But then, so when when I realized I couldn't get back and I couldn't find anything, they were holding their sale that was used because I would have rather just had my original. That's when I went to digital recorders. This is one of the Rollins here. This is the one with 60. You've got 8 tracks across, and then 8 tracks underneath it. But this particular model had an additional bank of 8 tracks underneath, so you could go crazy, right? So I've done it all with me playing every instrument. I've done it all where okay, I've added some drums, messed with that, and plugged in my bass, guitar, keyboards, whatever, right? And I've done loops too, brother. It's all to get a good sounding demo for me to take and do whatever I want to develop the sound of the song. I'm sure you understand. All right, folks. This has been fun as hell. We got about almost 2 hours. We got about an hour and three quarters out of this. And I've got to now go and totally collapse. So if any of you are hitting uh, you know, the comments after, say you're hitting the comments there, it might not be until tomorrow before I can get to them. All right, we'll see how I'm feeling. But quite literally, I got about 2 hours worth of sleep in the last 48 hours. What's that, babe?
109 likes.
109 likes, I know, and we had, I think, probably at our top about 105. I'll find out. I know it was over 100 viewers. So, and that I told Kimberly before we started this, now don't expect this is me doing what I said, and I've never streamed on a Monday. I've never streamed back to back off of a really highly viewed stream. Do you know that last stream I've got? It's already, what is it? Getting close to 3,500 views, right? So it was a real popular stream, and I appreciate all of you folks who have watched it. Uh, and it is now the most popular stream that I've done so far. I think I hit just barely 3,000 on another one that I was very proud of, and that one hit over 3,000 views, right? And it isn't even 24 hours yet. So, and it's still growing. So I thank each and every one of you. I thank you for your super thanks. But let's get back to the real thought here. I want to thank for those of you who can't do that or won't do that or not precluded. I don't do that. I understand that. I want to thank you for your first line of supporting this channel. You're watching this stream or watching my videos. Right there, that's the troops on the front line right there. All right. Then the specialists come in, right? Right? Yeah. And those are the guys that give me thumbs ups. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you guys out here, that are doing even more. So it's all, there are so many different levels of supporting this channel, and I appreciate every single one of them. All right. I always want you guys to know that I've had a great time tonight. I had more energy than I thought. I guess I kind of bumped up here.
Oh, they gave us energy.
Yeah, they gave us energy, didn't they, babe?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
sure did.
Because I'm going to tell you, I was going, typing this stuff, and I'm going in, and I go, oh, okay. I'm ready for my close up, Mr. DeMille. All right, folks. As usual, I love each and every one of you. I hope you had a great Easter weekend. If you're back to work already, if you're watching because you had an extra day added, congratulations for that. But if you're back to work, you watched me at the beginning on a Monday on a Monday afternoon. Wow, I am totally flattered. Okay, so I'll get that. What's that, darling?
Say goodbye, dear.
Good night. She's telling me, hang it up, babe. Right? You've overstayed your welcome.
Yeah.
All right, folks. We'll see you in my next tribal forum. This is number 23. We'll see you in number 24. And thanks for showing up. All right. Night, y'all.